What happens when someone's need to be admired turns into emotional manipulation? That's the dark side of narcissism. A narcissist is someone who has an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, and little empathy for others. They often see themselves as better or more special than everyone else and expect others to treat them accordingly. Narcissistic traits are deeply ingrained, but change is possible, though difficult. It requires self-awareness, genuine willingness to grow, and often professional therapy. Most narcissists resist change because admitting faults threatens their self-image. Narcissism doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It often has deep, complicated roots. For some, it begins in childhood, where they were constantly praised without ever being held accountable, growing up believing they were naturally superior and untouchable. Others may have faced the opposite: endless criticism, neglect, or emotional coldness, and learned to build a perfect, untouchable image to shield themselves from pain. Many grew up with love that was conditional, given only when they achieved something impressive, which taught them that their worth depended on performance rather than who they truly were. Imagine a coworker who constantly talks about their achievements, interrupts others to steer conversations back to themselves, and gets upset or dismissive if anyone criticizes them or doesn't praise them enough. They may take credit for team efforts, but rarely acknowledge others. This person is likely showing narcissistic traits because their focus is mainly on their own success and how others see them, rather than on collaboration or understanding others. Now breathe with me, because I know you've been holding your breath in tiny sips between arguments and apologies and second guessing, and I want you to have a full inhale again. In through your nose for 4, hold for 4, out through your mouth for 6, and do it again, because whether you're in a studio apartment in Brooklyn with the city humming through the walls, or a quiet townhouse outside of Atlanta where the cicadas sing their endless song, I am talking directly to you, to the part of you that knows you are not the chaos, not the problem, not too sensitive, not too much. You are simply trying to love inside a storm that kept changing shape, and tonight we are walking together out of the fog and into the kind of clarity that doesn't shout or argue or beg. It just stands, and when you stand in it, you start remembering who you are. I know what you've seen and felt. The compliment that found the bruise no one else could see. The rush of attention that felt like summer rain over Phoenix asphalt, and then disappeared like it never happened. The smile that turned to stone, and the hand that once held yours turning into a finger that points and criticizes and twists the story until you wonder if your own memory is unreliable. And you ask yourself more than once, am I the problem? Am I impossible to love? Am I asking for too much? And I need you to hear me the way you would hear a truth you've been waiting for all your life. No, you were not too difficult to love. You were simply too powerful to control, and people who rely on control will always call your strength a threat, because it is, at least to their illusion. Let's name the shape of the cycle, because once you can trace the outline, you stop getting lost inside it. It starts with what looks like love, but moves too fast to be safe. A flood of attention and promises and texts before lunch, and big declarations by night. It's a study disguised as intimacy, where your stories, your insecurities, your hopes get cataloged with precision and then reflected back at you like a mirror that flatters and distorts and pulls you closer. It feels like fate, and it sounds like I've never felt this way. And you're perfect. And there are plans for next summer in Cape Cod 2 weeks in, but intensity is not intimacy, and speed is not safety, and attention is not love. And the quiet test that protects you is simple. Does your no still mean no? Are your pauses respected? Are their actions consistent? When no one is watching, can the relationship hold the unglamorous middle of a Tuesday without demanding a performance from you? Because real love can sit with uncertainty while manipulation tries to outrun it. Then the temperature shifts, and at first it's so subtle you tell yourself you imagined it. Compliments thin out and critiques take their place. Curiosity turns into cross-examination. Your laugh is suddenly too loud, and your tears are suddenly drama, and your needs, the normal human needs everyone has, get relabeled as neediness. And you start negotiating for basic respect, like someone bargaining for a broken lamp at a flea market where the price changes every time you think you've agreed. And the more you hand over of yourself, the less valuable you become in their narrative, because the devaluation isn't random. It's a designed tactic that lowers your sense of worth so you'll accept less and call it love. And you wonder where the person from week 2 went, and you start working harder to bring them back. And that's the hook, because every extra ounce of effort you spend trying to restore the early glow becomes another strand. In the net, gaslighting is the fog machine that keeps the stage set for control. It sounds like that never happened. You're imagining it. You always do this? I only said that because you made me. And the repetition is the trick, because repeated doubt becomes borrowed reality. So you start screenshotting conversations you shouldn't have to archive and journaling timestamps so you don't get persuaded out of your own life. And you begin to outsource your truth to the very person who benefits when you lose it. And if your gut knows, but your mind is exhausted, that isn't a flaw in you. That is the wear and tear of resisting a spin that wasn't built for your sanity. And this is where you tether yourself to something that doesn't move: written facts, grounded friends, trauma, informed professionals, a future version of you who whispers, I believe you, and I will not abandon you to keep the peace. When you start getting strong, not loud but steady, not cutting but clear, when you stop chasing a moving finish line and step into the center of yourself where your worth isn't up for debate, that's when the scramble begins, because control is slipping, and people who rely on control will escalate to pull you back into orbit. They will flip from cold to kind, from tears to tantrums, from apology to accusation. They will play the victim and bring up the 3 generous things they did last fall as if they were a lifetime past to disrespect. And they will tell you that you've changed and they won't be wrong, because clarity changes you. It makes you calm where you used to be frantic. It makes you quiet where you used to over-explain. It makes you choose peace over proving, and that is the one thing manipulation can't digest. And then we arrive at the most convincing performance in the whole cycle: the collapse and the hoover, the tremble in the voice, the apology that sounds like ownership but dissolves under pressure, that you were right and I need help, and please don't give up on us. And it looks like transformation, but it is usually strategy. It's a panic response to the loss of control, and the hoover is the pull back into the loop. The playlist of your songs, the message to your best friend in Denver, the perfectly timed birthday note that lands at the exact minute your dad used to call. And if you're someone who believes in second chances, they'll beg for a third. If you can't bear to see someone in pain, they will make sure you see theirs. If you need to believe people can change, they will become a high-definition simulation of change just long enough to make you hope. And the moment your body relaxes and your guard drifts down, the old rhythm returns and the cycle restarts. And now it's even harder to walk away, because they made hope your handcuffs. And this is where you breathe and say out loud, even if your voice shakes: change isn't words. Change is consistent action over time. And if the change requires me to abandon myself to maintain, it isn't change. It's a new costume for control. If you share children or property or a business, you will blend gray rock with structure like you're framing a house that can stand in any weather. You keep exchanges businesslike. You use clear schedules. You document agreements. You consider co-parenting apps that timestamp messages. You involve neutral third parties as needed. You seek qualified legal advice in your state because laws differ. And if you're tempted to record conversations, remember that the United States is a patchwork of one party and all party consent laws. So before you hit record, you pause, you research, you talk to a lawyer so that your effort to protect yourself doesn't get flipped against you. And in all of this, you stay anchored to the truth that neutrality is not weakness, it is wisdom. And your quiet is not cruelty. It is self-respect. Boundaries don't need exclamation points to be real. They need consistency, which is the one thing your past self was rarely allowed to claim. So now when a voice rises, you let your voice stay level and you say, I won't continue this conversation if you raise your voice. We can revisit by email. And when false statements are thrown like confetti, you answer once with, that's not accurate. Here's my perspective. And then you step back because repetition is a trap. And when a request violates your peace, you say, I'm not available for that. And sometimes the most sacred boundary is a single word, no, not because you don't care, but because you finally do. And when the smear campaign starts, as it often does when control slips, you breathe into the truth that your allies will not be moved by gossip. And anyone who is quick to believe a stranger's version of you is not your ally, and if your reputation is used as a weapon, you gather facts, you stay measured, you remember that the loudest story isn't the truest one, and time has a way of revealing what panic tries to hide. If leaving is on your horizon, you plan like someone taking a cross-country road trip from Seattle to Miami, where weather and terrain change and preparation matters. You quietly set aside cash if it's safe. You gather copies of key documents like IDs and birth certificates and medical cards and keep them somewhere that isn't easily accessed by the person who has controlled the narrative. A trusted friend's home, a P.O. box, a safe deposit box. You change your passwords and enable two-factor authentication. You check for shared accounts and location sharing, and you remove permissions you no longer consent to. And you connect with the National Domestic Violence Hotline for a safety plan that fits your city and your reality, because you don't have to improvise your freedom alone. And if there's any chance of physical harm, you prioritize logistics over explanations, because your safety is a complete sentence and you are allowed to leave without convincing anyone that you deserve to be safe. Healing isn't just about surviving the storm. It's about understanding why you kept standing in the rain without an umbrella, because that's how you stop repeating the weather pattern with a different person. So you sit with yourself like a friend and ask, when did I learn to prove my worth? Where does the impulse to explain come from? When did no start to feel dangerous? And you do this with compassion, not blame, because you did the best you could with the tools you had, and now you're collecting new tools, and you learn to recognize a trauma bond for what it is, not proof of epic love, but a biochemical tether built on intermittent reinforcement, where the highs and lows trained your nervous system to confuse intensity with safety. And you begin retraining your body to recognize peace as not boring but powerful, stability as not weakness but strength. And you remind yourself daily that the kind of love you're building now feels less like fireworks and more like a steady porch light that is always on. When you come home, every day you practice small acts that reintroduce you to yourself. You take 10 minutes to breathe the way we did at the start. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. You place a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly, and you tell your body we're safe enough to breathe fully now. You write down one boundary you honored and one moment you chose peace over proving. You eat something that steadies your blood sugar, because biology is part of healing. You get sunlight on your face in the morning, if you can, because circadian rhythm is an ally when your nights have been long. And if loneliness arrives, as it does when the high fades, you remind yourself that missing the intensity doesn't mean you're meant for chaos. It means you're human and you are rewiring. And the longing passes like weather. When you don't chase it with texts you'll regret. And yes, there will be people who don't like the version of you that no longer over-explains, that says no without a courtroom's worth of evidence, that walks away from conversations where words are used as weapons, and they will call your clarity cold because your confusion used to serve them. But what they call walls are actually gates, and the gatekeeper is you. And not everyone gets access because not everyone has earned it. And what opens the gate now isn't charm or urgency or performance. It's consistency and accountability and emotional maturity. And if someone can't meet you there, you don't twist yourself to make up the difference. You make space for what's meant for the you who remembers her value. If this is finding you where you needed it most, I want you to know I'm right here with you. And I'd love to keep going because there is more to say about digital and financial self-protection, about what to do when you accidentally run into them at the grocery store, about gray rock versus no contact, about co-parenting and parallel parenting, and how to bring your nervous system home at night when the house is finally quiet. And because of platform limits, I'll deliver this in several long segments until we reach the full 2-hour script. And if you want the next stretch of this journey with me, just say, continue. And I will be back with the next set of flowing paragraphs that hold your hand and remind you that you are not cold. You are clear. You are not cruel. You are careful. And you do not need anyone's permission to choose peace over proving ever again.